Mocked when the Alpha's brother rejected her, the Omega watched the Alpha King claim her himself. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main characters. In a world where power and status rule, the Alpha King, Maxwell Cross, is admired, feared, and respected. He holds the throne of the Cross Kingdom with an iron fist. His every move is watched, and his word is law. Maxwell has everything a leader could want: loyalty, strength, and the admiration of those around him. But there is one thing Maxwell doesn't have. The woman he has loved for years, Serafina Wells, known as Sarah, the Omega. Sarah is beautiful, but not just in her looks. Her quiet strength and grace have always captivated Maxwell, though she has always been out of his reach. Maxwell's brother, Declan Cross, was the one who claimed her heart first. However, Declan, the heir to the throne, rejected Sarah when she needed him the most. The rejection was swift and brutal, leaving Sarah heartbroken and lost. It seemed as though no one would understand her pain, not even Maxwell, who always stood in the shadows, watching. But that is where things changed. Sarah's rejection set a fire inside Maxwell. For years, he had watched her suffer, but it was Declan's cold dismissal that finally sparked his determination to claim what should have always been his. Maxwell knew that he was not just the Alpha King, he was her rightful partner. As Sarah wandered through the darkness of her own sorrow, Maxwell's feelings deepened. Every moment spent apart from her only made him more certain. He wasn't going to let his brother's mistake keep them apart any longer. It wasn't just love that drove him, it was fate. Now, with everything in place, Maxwell would claim her for himself, even if it meant challenging his own brother for the right to be with the woman he desired most. As the story begins, Maxwell stands at the threshold of his decision, knowing that once he steps forward, there will be no turning back. But Sarah, despite her pain and doubt, is not ready to accept her fate so easily. The tension between them simmers, and the time for games has passed. The Alpha King is ready to take what is his. Maxwell had always known that his brother's rejection of Sarah had been a mistake, but he hadn't realized just how much of a mistake it was until that fateful night. The night when the walls between them, built by years of family loyalty and duty, came crumbling down. He watched from the shadows as Sarah left the grand hall in tears, her heart shattered by Declan's cold words. It wasn't just the rejection that hurt her, it was the fact that she had been made to feel insignificant, unworthy of love. Maxwell had watched her for years, but this was the first time he had seen the full extent of her pain. It stung. It hurt in a way he couldn't put into words, and it ignited something deep within him, a fire he couldn't ignore. Sarah had always been there, in the background, someone he could never fully have. But now, with Declan's rejection, she was more than just a dream to him. She was someone in desperate need of protection, of love, and of healing. And Maxwell wasn't about to let anyone else claim her, not when he knew deep down she was meant to be his. The next few days were a blur of strategy, contemplation, and inner conflict. Maxwell knew his actions would have consequences. Challenging his brother's claim over Sarah would not be taken lightly, especially by Declan, who was heir to the throne. The power dynamics were delicate, and any wrong move could upset the fragile balance of their world. But Maxwell was determined. He had seen the woman he loved broken, and he couldn't stand by any longer. He had to act. But Sarah wasn't just going to fall into his arms without a fight. She had endured enough pain and heartbreak, and she wasn't about to let another alpha dictate her fate. She had been hurt, not just by Declan, but by the world that saw her as nothing more than an Omega. Maxwell knew this, and he knew it wouldn't be easy to win her trust. As he approached her, he could see the hesitation in her eyes. She was guarded, her walls up high, as they had always been. And yet, there was a flicker of something there, a spark of curiosity, perhaps, or something deeper. Maxwell didn't know, but he knew that this was the moment that could change everything. "Sarah," he began, his voice soft yet filled with an undeniable authority. She met his gaze, her blue eyes wide with both surprise and wariness. You don't have to be afraid anymore. I'm not here to hurt you. She shook her head, her breath coming in soft, measured gasps. You don't understand, Maxwell. I've been rejected by your brother. I've been rejected by this whole world. I'm not the one you want. That's where you're wrong, he replied, stepping closer. His voice was low, filled with the sincerity he had never expressed before. I don't want anyone else. I want you, Sarah. You've always been the one I've wanted. There was a long pause as Sarah processed his words, her gaze never leaving his. It was as though she was trying to read him, to figure out whether he was like the others, like Declan, who had treated her as if she were nothing. Maxwell could see the doubt in her eyes, but he refused to back down. I won't let anyone else take you from me, he continued, his tone steady. I'll protect you. I'll fight for you. This time it's my turn. The weight of his words hung in the air, and for the first time, Sarah didn't look away. Her lips parted, her body tensed as if she wanted to say something, but she couldn't find the words. Maxwell knew that this was a turning point, that this was the moment when everything could change. But he also knew that he had to give her time. Time to heal, time to decide. And he would wait, because no matter how long it took, he would make her see that she belonged with him. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions for both Maxwell and Sarah. Maxwell found himself caught in the delicate balance of power, love, and responsibility. His feelings for Sarah had always been there, but now they were more than just a passing fancy. They were a force, a driving need to protect her, to be the man she deserved. But Sarah, on the other hand, was still cautious. She had been hurt before, and trusting someone again seemed impossible. The walls she had built around her heart were thick, and Maxwell knew that breaking through them wouldn't be easy. He could sense her hesitance every time they spoke, every time they were in the same room. She wanted to believe him, but the scars of her past were too deep. Despite her reluctance, Maxwell didn't back down. He kept his distance at first, not wanting to push her further away, but making his presence known in subtle ways. He would leave small gifts for her, books she might like, a bouquet of flowers, or even a carefully chosen piece of jewelry. It was his way of showing her that he cared, that he wasn't just another man who would hurt her. But Sarah wasn't sure how to respond. Every time she saw Maxwell's face, she felt a twinge of longing, but also fear. What if he, too, was like Declan? What if, in the end, he would leave her like everyone else had? It was a thought that haunted her, one she couldn't shake no matter how hard she tried. One evening, as Sarah walked through the royal gardens, she found herself lost in thought. The sun had just set, casting a soft glow over the flowers and trees. The air was cool and fresh, the kind of evening that made her feel at peace. But that peace was shattered when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned around to see Maxwell standing there, his expression unreadable. Sarah, he said softly, his voice low, but filled with warmth. I didn't mean to startle you. She took a step back, unsure of what to say. What do you want, Maxwell? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I just wanted to talk, he replied, taking a cautious step closer. I know you're still not sure about me, about us. But I need you to know that I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to leave you like he did. Sarah's breath caught in her throat at the mention of Declan. She looked away, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Why should I believe you? She asked, her voice shaking. Because I'm not him, Maxwell said firmly, his eyes locked onto hers. I'm not Declan, and I will never make you feel like you're nothing. You mean everything to me. Sarah, you always have. The sincerity in his voice was undeniable. For a moment, Sarah was lost in his gaze. She could see the truth in his eyes, something she had never seen before, vulnerability, longing, and above all, love. But still, she hesitated. I don't know if I can trust you, she whispered, her heart heavy. Maxwell reached out, gently taking her hand in his. I understand, he said softly. But I will prove myself to you, every single day. I won't rush you. I just need you to know that I'm here, and I'll be here as long as you need me. Sarah looked down at their joined hands, feeling the warmth of his touch. The connection between them was undeniable, and for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to feel something other than fear. It wasn't love yet, but it was a start. And for now, that was enough. Days turned into weeks, and with each passing moment, Maxwell and Sarah grew closer, though the road ahead was still uncertain. Sarah found herself slowly allowing Maxwell into her world, a world she had kept locked away for so long. Her heart, once guarded and bruised, now beat a little faster whenever he was near. It wasn't love yet, but it was something real. Maxwell, for his part, never rushed her. He knew that time was a luxury they didn't have, but he also understood that trust wasn't something that could be forced. He showed up every day, offering his support, his presence, and most importantly, his patience. He was always there when she needed him, whether it was a simple conversation, a walk in the gardens, or a quiet evening spent together in the royal library. Slowly, the walls Sarah had built around her heart began to crack. She would catch herself laughing at something Maxwell said, or find herself drawn to his kindness and the way he listened to her without judgment. He wasn't like Declan, who had dismissed her as unimportant. Maxwell saw her for who she truly was. He saw her strength, her beauty, her vulnerability, and he loved her for all of it. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Maxwell invited Sarah to join him for a walk through the palace gardens. It had become a ritual, of sorts for them, a moment of peace amidst the chaos of royal duties. As they strolled along the path, the air cool and crisp, Maxwell spoke quietly. "I know this hasn't been easy for you, Sarah. I know that the wounds of the past are not easily healed. But I need you to know that I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Sarah glanced up at him, her heart stirring with emotions she had long kept hidden. "You've said that before," she replied softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "But how do I know it's true? How do I know you won't just leave when things get hard?" Maxwell stopped walking and turned to face her, his gaze steady and unwavering. "Because I'm not like him," he said, his voice filled with conviction. "I'm not like Declan, and I'm not going to hurt you. I'm here to stay, no matter what." Sarah felt a lump form in her throat. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that Maxwell was different, that he wasn't going to break her heart like everyone else had. But the scars left by Declan's rejection were still fresh, still a constant reminder of her past pain. Maxwell reached out, gently brushing a stray lock of hair from her face, his touch soft but warm. "I know you're scared," he said, his tone tender. "I can see it in your eyes. But I promise you, I'll never hurt you. I'll never make you feel like you're not enough." Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of his words wrap around her like a blanket. For the first time in a long time, she felt something other than fear. She felt hope. "I want to believe you, Maxwell," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "But I'm afraid. I'm afraid of being hurt again." Maxwell stepped closer, his presence comforting and steady. "I won't hurt you," he repeated, his voice firm and reassuring. "I'll be here, Sarah, every step of the way." And in that moment, something shifted. The walls around Sarah's heart, though not completely gone, were beginning to fall. She still had doubts, still had fears, but for the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to trust him. Maxwell smiled gently, reaching out to take her hand in his. "One step at a time," he said softly, his voice filled with warmth and understanding. And so, they continued their walk through the gardens, the night sky above them filled with stars. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start towards something new, something real. The days following that evening in the garden were quieter, yet filled with a growing sense of something new between Maxwell and Sarah. It was the kind of quiet that wasn't uncomfortable, but rather peaceful, as though a new chapter had begun without anyone fully realizing it. For Sarah, each passing day brought her closer to a decision, though she still held back, unsure of her own feelings. She wasn't used to letting someone in, not after what Declan had done to her. But Maxwell, with his patient kindness and unwavering presence, was slowly but surely breaking down the walls she had spent so long building. Maxwell, too, was feeling the weight of what was happening. He had always wanted to be close to Sarah, but now that he realized that this was about more than just love. It was about proving to her that she could trust him, that he would never betray her or make her feel the way Declan had. And so he waited. He let her take the lead, knowing that pushing her would only make things harder. Instead, he offered her his friendship, his understanding, and his loyalty. Slowly, Sarah began to open up to him, just a little. She would meet him in the library for quiet conversations, their voices the only sound in the vast room filled with ancient books. Sometimes they would walk through the gardens, as they had before, but now there was less hesitation in her steps. She had begun to trust him, not just as the Alpha King, but as Maxwell, the man who saw her for who she truly was. One afternoon, as they sat together by a fountain in the royal gardens, Maxwell turned to Sarah with a thoughtful expression on his face. "Sarah," he said quietly, "I know things have been difficult for you, but I also know that you are stronger than you realize." She looked at him, her brow furrowing slightly. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice soft. Maxwell smiled gently. "You've been through so much. You've faced rejection, pain, and loss, and yet you're still standing. That takes strength. You're not as broken as you think you are." Sarah felt her heart twist at his words. She had never seen herself as strong, not after everything that had happened. But Maxwell's words hit her differently. They made her feel as though, maybe, she wasn't as lost as she thought. "I don't know if I'm strong," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if I can ever trust again. But you make me want to try." Maxwell reached out and gently took her hand in his touch warm and reassuring. "I will never ask you to do anything you're not ready for," he said softly. "But know this, I'm not going anywhere. I'll be here for you, Sarah, no matter what." For the first time in a long while, Sarah felt a flicker of hope in her chest. It was small, but it was there. She wasn't ready to give her heart away just yet, but she was willing to let herself feel something again. Something that wasn't fear. "Thank you, Maxwell," she said quietly, her voice full of emotion. "I don't know where this will go, but I'm willing to see." Maxwell smiled, his heart swelling with emotion. "That's all I can ask for." As they sat together, the sound of the water flowing in the fountain seemed to echo the new beginning between them. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And for the first time in a long time, Sarah allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was a future for her after all. A future where trust could be rebuilt, where love could grow, and where she could finally let go of the past. And in that moment, surrounded by the beauty of the gardens and the warmth of Maxwell's presence, Sarah felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid to face it. The weeks passed, and with them came a steady rhythm in Maxwell and Sarah's interactions. There were still moments of uncertainty, but they were fewer now, replaced by a growing bond. Maxwell's patience, once tested, had begun to pay off. He no longer felt like a distant king or the powerful alpha that Sarah had once feared. Now, he was simply Maxwell to her, a man who had proven time and again that he could be trusted. As for Sarah, her heart, once shut tight, began to open little by little. She still had doubts, but the walls she had so carefully built were crumbling, piece by piece. Every conversation with Maxwell felt more natural. Every shared glance and smile added to the connection they were forming. Still, the past lingered, a shadow that neither of them could ignore. Sarah couldn't shake the fear that somehow, eventually, Maxwell would be like Declan. She told herself that it was impossible, that Maxwell was different, but there was always that lingering doubt. She had been let down before, and the scars of rejection ran deep. Maxwell, sensing her hesitation, knew that trust couldn't be rushed. He continued to show her, through his actions, that he was nothing like his brother. One evening, as they sat in a quiet corner of the royal garden, Maxwell spoke softly, his voice filled with understanding. "I know the past has hurt you, Sarah," he said, his gaze never leaving her face. "And I know that healing takes time. I'm not asking for your heart right away. I'm asking for your trust." Sarah looked at him, her chest tightening at his words. She had learned to guard her heart for so long, to keep it hidden behind layers of doubt and fear. But Maxwell's sincerity was hard to ignore. "You've already proven yourself," she replied, her voice quiet. "You've shown me that you're different. But there's a part of me that's still afraid." Maxwell's expression softened. He took her hand gently in his touch warm and comforting. "I understand," he said, his voice low. "I'll be here, Sarah. Every day, I'll prove that I'm not going anywhere." The way he spoke, with such certainty and kindness, made Sarah's heart flutter. She could see that he wasn't just speaking empty words, he meant them. And for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, it was possible to trust again. "I don't know what the future holds," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "But I'm willing to try." Maxwell smiled, his eyes filled with warmth and affection. "That's all I could ever ask for." As they sat together, the night air cool and comforting, Sarah felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. There was still a long road ahead, and many challenges to face. But for the first time, she didn't feel so alone. With Maxwell by her side, she felt like she could take on whatever came their way. The past would always be a part of her, but it no longer had to define her. Together, they could build something new, something stronger, something real. And though the journey ahead was uncertain, Sarah was ready to walk it with him, one step at a time. The days passed in a quiet, steady rhythm, the kind that brought comfort rather than urgency. Maxwell and Sarah had found a tentative peace between them, an unspoken understanding that neither of them needed to rush. Maxwell knew that Sarah's heart, though healing, was still fragile. But each moment they spent together, whether in silence or conversation, made it clear that they were building something strong. Sarah still held onto her past, her scars, the rejection, the pain, but slowly, she was letting those things fade into the background. She knew the journey ahead would be long, but with Maxwell by her side, it felt more bearable. One evening, as the sun set behind the palace, casting golden light over the royal gardens, Maxwell invited Sarah for a walk. They strolled in comfortable silence, the gentle breeze of early autumn rustling the leaves around them. Sarah had come to love these quiet moments with him, where words weren't necessary, and just being in each other's company felt like enough. After a while, Maxwell broke the silence, his voice soft but firm. "Sarah, I want you to know something," he began. She glanced up at him, curious but uncertain. "What is it?" she asked, her heart quickening just slightly. Maxwell stopped walking and turned to face her, his expression serious yet tender. "I'm not asking for everything from you right now," he said, his gaze unwavering. "But I do want to be someone you can rely on, someone you can trust completely. I want to share my life with you, if you'll let me." Sarah felt her chest tighten at his words. She had never been asked to share her life with anyone, let alone someone who cared enough to say it so openly. It wasn't just his words that moved her. It was the sincerity in his voice, the way he made her feel like she mattered, like she wasn't just an afterthought in his world, but a part of it. "Maxwell," she said softly, taking a step closer to him. "I've been afraid. Afraid of being hurt again, of losing myself in someone else. But you've shown me that it's okay to feel again. You've made me believe that maybe, just maybe, I can trust someone again." Maxwell smiled, his eyes filled with both warmth and understanding. "You don't have to trust me all at once," he replied. "I'm not asking for your heart immediately, but I want to be here for you, for however long it takes." Sarah's heart fluttered at his words, and for the first time in so long, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could have a future. "I'm willing to try," she whispered, her voice soft but full of emotion. "To try to trust, to try to love." Maxwell reached out, gently cupping her face in his hands. "You don't have to do it alone," he said, his voice full of promise. "I'm right here." Sarah closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. The warmth of his hands, the steadiness of his presence, made her feel safe, something she hadn't felt in so long. Slowly, she opened her eyes, meeting his gaze. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "For being here, for giving me this chance." Maxwell smiled again, his heart swelling with hope. "You don't need to thank me. I'll always be here for you." As they continued their walk through the gardens, hand in hand, Sarah felt something shifting deep within her. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was the beginning of something new, something that felt real and right. She wasn't sure where this path would lead, but with Maxwell beside her, she was no longer afraid to take the first step. Together, they would face whatever came next, one day at a time. The days continued to blend together in a peaceful rhythm, with Maxwell and Sarah finding more moments of connection. Maxwell had never been one for waiting, but something about Sarah's hesitance made him slow down, made him appreciate the quiet moments between them even more. He was learning to savor each step they took forward, knowing that their bond needed time to grow. For Sarah, the trust she had once thought impossible was now becoming a reality. Her heart was still guarded, but with Maxwell, it was beginning to feel less like a burden. The tenderness he showed her, the quiet respect he had for her boundaries, were all things she had never known before. It was a slow, steady journey, but with each passing day, she felt herself healing just a little more. One evening, as they sat together on the balcony of the palace, Watching the stars emerge in the twilight sky, Maxwell turned to Sarah with a question that had been weighing on his mind. "Sarah, do you ever think about what comes next for us?" he asked, his voice soft but earnest. She glanced at him, unsure at first how to respond. Her gaze drifted to the horizon, where the sky was painted in deep shades of purple and gold. "I think about it sometimes," she said, her voice thoughtful. "But it's hard to picture a future when my past still feels so close. I don't want to make promises I'm not sure I can keep." Maxwell nodded, his expression understanding. "I don't want you to make promises, Sarah. I don't need that from you. I just need you to know that I'm here. Whatever comes next, whatever challenges we face, I'll be by your side." Sarah's heart fluttered at his words. They were simple, yet they carried so much weight. It was as if, in that moment, Maxwell was offering her something far more valuable than just his presence. He was offering her the freedom to be herself, without fear, without the burden of expectations. "I know," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "And that means more to me than you'll ever know." The quietness between them deepened, and for a few moments, they simply sat there, side by side, the world around them falling into the soft hush of the night. Sarah had never known this kind of peace before. Even in the midst of uncertainty, there was something about Maxwell that made her feel like everything would be okay. It wasn't just his words, but his actions, the way he never pushed her, the way he listened without judgment. It was the way he allowed her to take her time, to process everything at her own pace. And, in that moment, Sarah realized something important. She had never truly let anyone in before, not in the way she was starting to let Maxwell in. It scared her, but it also felt like freedom. She wasn't defined by the hurt of her past anymore. She didn't have to carry it alone. And that thought, that realization, made her heart swell with something she hadn't felt in years: hope. "Maybe," she said, her voice stronger now, "maybe there's a chance for us. A real chance. I'm not sure what the future looks like, but I'm willing to find out. With you." Maxwell smiled, his heart lightening at her words. "That's all I can ask for, Sarah. One step at a time." And as the night wrapped around them, with the stars twinkling like promises in the sky above, Sarah felt a sense of peace that she hadn't known in a long time. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid to face it. Not with Maxwell beside her. As the days passed, Maxwell and Sarah's bond grew even stronger. What had started as a tentative connection was now a solid foundation, built on trust, respect, and the quiet understanding that they were no longer two separate individuals navigating their worlds alone. They were a team, but as with any journey, there were still obstacles to overcome. Sarah's past, though no longer a constant source of pain, was a shadow that still lingered at the edges of her mind. Maxwell knew that she wasn't completely healed, and he never rushed her. He gave her the time she needed to come to terms with everything, but also made it clear, in his own way, that he would stand by her, no matter what. One afternoon, as they sat together in the grand hall of the palace, Sarah caught sight of a letter lying on the table. It was sealed with the royal crest, an invitation. "Maxwell," she said softly, her voice tinged with curiosity. "What's this?" Maxwell glanced at the letter and sighed. "It's an invitation to the annual gathering of the kingdom's leaders," he explained. "It's a formal event where alliances are made and important decisions are discussed." Sarah nodded slowly, understanding the weight the event carried. "And you want me to attend?" she asked, her tone uncertain. Maxwell looked at her, his expression serious but kind. "I want you there, Sarah. This is not just about politics or power. It's about showing that we are united. That you and I, together, are a force to be reckoned with." Sarah felt a flutter of nervousness in her chest. She had never been a part of something like this, never been in the public eye as the companion of someone with so much influence. She had always kept to the shadows, but now, Maxwell was asking her to step into the light. "I don't know if I'm ready for that," she admitted, her voice low. Maxwell reached out, gently taking her hand in his. "You don't have to be ready. You just have to trust me. We'll do this together. And I'll be there with you, every step of the way." His words were soft, but there was an unwavering conviction in them that made Sarah's heart skip a beat. She didn't have to do this alone. Maxwell was with her, just as he always had been. Slowly, she nodded. "Okay," she said, her voice steady now. "I'll go with you. Together." That evening, as the preparations for the event began, Sarah found herself standing before the mirror in her chambers, adjusting the gown Maxwell had chosen for her. It was elegant, simple, yet stunning. She had never worn anything like it before. As she ran her fingers over the fabric, she felt a wave of uncertainty wash over her. What would the other leaders think of her? Would they judge her for her past? Would they question her place at Maxwell's side? The questions tumbled in her mind. But then she heard Maxwell's voice from the doorway. "You look beautiful," he said, his voice warm and full of admiration. She turned to face him, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Thank you," she whispered. He stepped into the room, his gaze soft as he approached her. "You don't have to prove anything to anyone, Sarah. Not to me, and not to them. You are exactly where you need to be, right here with me." Sarah felt her heart swell at his words. She knew, deep down, that he was right. She didn't need to prove herself to anyone. She had already come so far, and with Maxwell at her side, there was nothing she couldn't face. "I'm ready," she said, her voice filled with newfound confidence. "Let's go." Together, they walked into the gathering, heads held high. The leaders of the kingdom watched as Maxwell and Sarah entered the room, the air thick with anticipation. But Sarah no longer felt like an outsider. She felt like she belonged. And with Maxwell beside her, she knew she could face anything the future held. The evening unfolded with speeches, discussions, and political maneuvering. But through it all, Maxwell and Sarah remained a united front, their bond undeniable. As the event drew to a close, Sarah realized something important. She wasn't defined by her past, and she wasn't defined by the judgments of others. She was strong, capable, and ready to stand by Maxwell, no matter what challenges lay ahead. And with that realization, she knew her place was exactly where she had always wanted it to be, by his side, as an equal, as his partner. The future, though uncertain, no longer scared her. With Maxwell, Sarah had found the strength to face whatever came next.